Okay. Okay.
So I'm going to ask you report, and
Okay.
then afterwards.
Okay. Because otherwise I would just sit and we could have a conversation.
James, to be sure, you can ask once again if people are seeing the screen also.
Okay. All right. So we have people watching.
Yes, there are
Oh.
some people.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good. So trusting that folks can hear and see me and see what's on the screen. Good afternoon.
Hello.
So what I want to do is pick up with where I left off the end of the morning, and this idea of science by design, which I'll get into in a little bit, but it's one of the ways that our center has tried to develop some tools, we do some curriculum around this. Maria actually was part of the team that was working on some of this when she was at our center a couple of years ago. And so just to quickly recap in case lunchtime and other sessions. So the stuff we talked about this morning, responsive relationships, stress, core skills, that it's the experiences and environments that shape child development, and that we can build resilience, and that we've got tools with the science and the knowledge base to help us do that. And so all of that then sort of helped us think about this, what would be the process of actually starting to use the science. And so it's kind of a three-part thing, and we're not going to do all of this today. But starting with, we've presented this content, and it's grown and developed, but over the years. And the first question is, that's all really interesting. What do we do with it? Tell us what to do. And we're not policy analysts. So it's not like we have, go do these three things and your kids will be better. Not the way the world works. So what we realize is that the context in which people work are very different. And so what's the process of helping folks start to contextualize this knowledge into their own reality? And then how does that help to start a design process that can lead into some testing and iteration of ideas and so forth? So we're going to do mostly the first, a little bit of the second today. And the tool for this is this idea of these three design principles, which is where I left off in the morning. And that taking all of that science, that story of the science, and saying, okay, but what can we use? What are some principles that are both specific enough, but also not too specific, that helps folks in their own situations use the science as a set of tools? And so that's where we came up with the build responsive relationships, the life skills, and the sources of stress. And again, that these work very much in concert with each other. And our goal through this is that we're really trying to look for improved outcomes for both kids and adults. For the kids, it's healthy development. For the adults, it's being able to strengthen their capacities as caregivers, and hopefully the stability and productivity economically and as citizens and so forth. And so this process actually evolved out of work we were doing largely with folks in the child welfare system in the US. And again, that kind of like, okay, what do we do with this? And through a series of kind of workshops and things like that, my colleagues who were doing that work directly gradually distilled down these and tried them out and wrote a couple of briefs about them. And so have now, over the last 3 or 4 years, been turning this into an actual kind of curriculum and training process. So you're going to get a taste of that this afternoon. And so why these principles? Why did we kind of land on these three? The stuff from this morning makes it pretty clear. But so the responsive relationships for kids, we heard it all this morning. It promotes brain development. It helps us regulate stress response in kids. It builds that attachment and the social emotional skills, and is that buffering protection, if you will, against the worst sort of results of exposure to excessive stress. For adults, and this is where I think we focus so much on the adult-child relationships, we often lose sight that adults need responsive, caring relationships too. And so both what they get in a relationship with their child, but also what they're getting from other service providers or clinicians or professionals, that there's emotional support. I think our colleague from Latvia talked about how lonely it feels as a first time, as a new mom, and you're isolated. And so how are we doing that? How does this help build the kind of confidence of parents and reduces their stress, so that, again, the excessive stress functions in both parts of the child-adult relationship, and we need to pay attention to it on both sides of that. And so that's why. As illustration, just to kind of get wheels turning, what does this actually look like in terms of in programs and policies? It's things like, it's about time. Is a child able to have a sustained period of time in a program? Or that funding changes, so something stops, it starts, there's housing instability. We have a terrible problem in the US in our welfare system of rapid placement, right? Kids just get moved. And so that you can't sustain the development of those relationships. So how are we looking at the way we provide programs and services to be able to sustain that time to build? The other place where this happens is in the workforce. So again, if the preschool teacher changes every 6 months, if the caseworker turns over, that then the ability of the adults to establish responsive and ongoing supportive relationships with their service providers is diminished. And so, we know, unfortunately, a lot of the workforce that is frontline with young kids and families is the worst paid, gets the least respect, doesn't have paths for professional growth and development. So what are we doing to look at our workforce? And then they need time. Do they have time to build those relationships? You get 10 minutes as a pediatrician in a well child visit. You get, I don't know about here, that's in the US. If you're a caseworker, how much time, what's your practice? What are your regulations in that? And time isn't cheap, unfortunately. Time costs money, but it's something we should be thinking about in terms of what the science is telling us. So what I was going to, if we had a bigger group, I was going to then, you'll see there are this like stop and chat. We can go through this and then I'll let you all talk for a little bit about kind of all three of these principles together. But basically, the way that this works is it's a reflection exercise. Okay, that's the principle. As you think about what you're doing right now in your work, whatever your job is this reflected there? Is there a gap? Is it bringing up insights about, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Could we do this differently? So, and if you want to stop in that, actually, I thought we should probably just introduce ourselves since we're only 4 people here. And we know each other already. So, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
just maybe I will grab the microphone and keep.
Okay. Yes, so people can hear who's in the room.
Yes, so hello, I'm Sandra Kairi. I'm doctor in educational sciences, and I'm head of Institute of Educational Sciences here at Faculty of Philosophy. We are now having the seminar.
And actually,
I am Joanna from the Estonian Ministry of Social Affairs and from the Children and Families Department, so in charge of everything that is connected to children's rights.
Hello, my name is Yeva. I'm working in Lithuanian Save the Children organization, and I'm responsible for program Positive Parenting. And I'm also a mother of 3 little kids, so it's also useful.
okay. Okay, so we'll do this together in a little bit, but so second principle, straight. We heard a lot about this, but again, this works both for children and for adults. So less stress, less activation of the stress response system, fewer of those kinds of situations that could trigger an extreme activation of stress response. And again, less stress or positive stress, the healthier the developmental process is and how that supports health and well-being. And for adults, it goes back to the truck metaphor, right? Bandwidth is another way we talk about this, to use that if adults are really stressed, they don't have the energy, the capacity to deploy whatever skills they have and want to use as parents. The more that stress is reduced, the more they're able to deploy those executive function and self-regulation skills, those planning skills and so forth. And it gives more opportunity for the kind of responsive caregiving that they and we want parents to have the time to do. So what does this look like in practice? Just again, illustrations. Lots of times the families we're trying to teach things, build capacity, help them be better parents, have some really basic needs that aren't being met. And so they need those things kind of taken care of, or help with those things to be, again, have the ability to be fully present for other kinds of training programs. And so, diapers, food, basic kinds of things are going to reduce. I mean, if I'm a parent and I'm worried about having enough food for my child, or that I ran out of diapers and I'm sitting in a parenting seminar, I'm not paying attention to the parenting seminar. I'm worrying about those kinds of things. And so that's taking away that stress helps. I think these next two are closely related. Too often we design our services for the ease and efficiency of those delivering the service, not for those who are receiving the service. So is it easy to get to? Is it welcoming? Too often, we were talking about public and private services at the break earlier today. Our public spaces where people receive services aren't the nicest. They're not freshly painted. The lighting isn't great. They might not be in, and so it just sends signals that we don't particularly care. And again, this is particularly true in the US. Services are fragmented. People have to go to 4 different places to get what they actually order. They have to go to 7 different websites to know if they're even eligible for service. It's all that kind of stuff. And all these things get set up in ways that make it hard for those who are eligible for these programs and services to actually access them. And again, we come back to the workforce. Frequently, the folks who are the frontline workforce are often living in the same kinds of environments as the people they're serving. And so they've got a lot of stress. And they're not well paid, and they work in dingy buildings. And so we also need to be paying attention to what are we doing to reduce the stress, to allow the professionals their own bandwidth to be able to do the job that they want to do. We can go into this. And finally, the life skills. Again, these are life skills. These are the kinds of skills that help any of us be successful in school, in work, as citizens and neighbors, as contributing members as being adults. It's also they're the kind of skills that help people make I'm trying to say that, like, pro-healthy decisions. Not perfectly. I mean, I'm certainly don't make all perfect pro-healthy decisions, but largely, right? As opposed to more negative behavioral kinds of decisions about things. And again, those skills help you as adults, as good workers, better parents, able to maintain and keep organized chaotic households, as we know with young kids. And these skills in both adults and kids then help the dyad in the ways that you can imagine. And so again, what does this look like in terms of practice? The most important is we are frequently very good about giving people information and expecting them to change their behavior. And what all this tells us is these skills are buildable, but only with practice and coaching. None of us sort of just go out and build these skills by ourselves. And so are we building into the way we provide programs and services real opportunities for folks to practice, to get coaching? When we think about it, that coaching is something that, like, the world's best athletes get all the time because it's helping them practice to get better. And so why should anybody not have coaching, right? And so it's not like it's a bad thing. It's like, how do we frame this in a positive way that this is, everybody needs practice. Everybody needs someone as a coach to help reflect back and help them do those things. One of the other metaphors that's gotten developed more for education by our partners at the Frameworks Institute is the idea of a braided rope of skills. This was trying to counter some of the, again, in the US mostly, the cultural frames that education is about like serious subjects. It's math, it's writing, it's, you know, English, it's all those things. And all this other stuff is just sort of fluffy, right? And they're like, no, actually, if you think about a really strong rope, it's got several braided strands. And so thinking about how do we work in building these life skills into the way we have curriculum. Often this gets lumped into the kind of social emotional learning category, but how are we helping build these skills as part of the way we organize classrooms, we talk about curriculum. And then the last piece here is, as an example again, that very often we set really big goals. So if I'm a family that's been experiencing homelessness, and I say my goal is to get housing, that's hard. And I could be working at it and probably have been working at it for years and don't get there, so I feel like a failure. And so how do we break that down into smaller steps? And what you're doing in that way is building that sense of agency and self-efficacy gradually. And so figuring out, okay, what's that positive reinforcement? I've made some success. I start to feel more confident in myself, and I can see that I'm making progress as opposed to, oh my God, I'm never going to get there. So those are the, when we talk about like how we do this work, what do we have to look at in the ways that our kind of programs and services are designed? These are some examples of how we might be deploying these kinds of principles. Okay. Again. And so then collectively, there are sort of three ways we think these principles have been useful. Actually, there's a fourth that's not on this slide. They become a lens on our current work and say, okay, are we aligned with what we're doing right now or are we not? Where are the gaps? Which then helps us use these as kind of to design stuff, as a guide to thinking about where do we need to develop new ideas, some new approaches. And then not in a really specific kind of evaluation way, but they can serve as kind of targets for knowing if we're on the right track. So what the science is saying to us is if that we are seeing improvements in these areas, there's a pretty good chance you're on the right path to the kind of outcomes that you want to see. So they can serve as those kinds of guides and targets for as we're looking at and evaluating our work. The fourth thing, I don't think that's on here, no, it's not, is that we've used this a lot with cross-departmental teams. And so one of the challenges you always hear is that early childhood has to work across multiple sectors. And so everyone wants to break down the silos. Breaking down the silos is one of those really long-term. We haven't done it yet. I don't know if we're ever going to do it. And so actually, something like these principles allow people from different parts of government or different agencies to see together what can be done, bring this design lens, but then each part of that system can align the work that they're already doing and are mandated to do into that kind of a set of goals. And so it sets a kind of common table for the conversation. It doesn't require everybody giving up their budget to a new agency, right? Which is what the problem is, or the education department, you know, giving up their money to the child protection department or to the health department, right? So that it can unlock and help align those kinds of conversations and help different actors in the system see how what they are already mandated to do can get aligned with what the science is telling us and with what has to happen early in life. And so we've seen some success with kind of those kinds of teams coming together and being able to kind of use this as a tool to do that kind of work. And so this is then, we've created just this very simple matrix. I'm going to hand this around. And for those who are kind of with us online, you can look at this on screen. And just be curious just to take 5 minutes, think about the work you're doing now. And it's so that idea that you can put a specific project or initiative that you're focusing on in that top blue box, and then it's a matrix. And so thinking about how is that particular piece of work, do you see these 3 principles currently reflected in that work, which is that top row? Or, are you seeing places where it's not aligned, where there are gaps, or we hadn't thought of it that way, or this program does a really good job on the relationship part, but actually isn't doing that well on the stress part. So anyway, so let's take a few minutes. couple more minutes, or are you?
A few more minutes.
Okay. How are we doing?
I think we're done.
Okay. So then what we would do with this, we can do a little bit of this, is now this then starts to help you, a team, move into in design space in this kind of way. So that looking at something that got named as a place where there could be stronger alignment, how does that spark a kind of, how might we address that gap or better align this particular thing? So that starts to get into the kind of the design space. And so what I was thinking is, if each of you wanted to share one, is there an area of like, oh, this is a place we could be better aligned, we could just have a conversation. There's a lot of interesting expertise and different expertise around the table, and just sort of have a conversation about each of those areas. There's one that you want to identify. Or more than one? If I sit, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm interested. I don't know who's watching me from where here, but.
So actually, thank you, James. The previous points that you made, I feel enlightened in that sense that this is not only my own gut feeling, but we're actually, doing things in a good direction. And what very well kind of hit me in that sense was the reducing the staff stress, which we are currently very much into reforming in that sense. So it is true that talking about the child protection workers, for instance, that currently in my country in Estonia, they are the lone wolves acting out on the field, which is shooting into your own hand or foot, because this is not sustainable. Being lonely, being alone. Even we have very small municipalities, local governments, and majority of them, in 80% of them, we have 0 to 3 child protection workers. Imagine 0 to 3, most of them 1 to 2. And now you know the myriad of all the different issues that child protection and welfare specialists have to face from birth to up to the age of 18, and everything that comes along the way, including the family benefits, including the deposition of family packages, or the baby packages, or everything going out to do some information days, spreading words in the kindergartens, and then how much work to have left or time to do with the families, together with the families. So this is something that has been screaming in the faces for a long time, but fortunately now I think we have a good momentum where we can really bring along the change. And this also I very briefly mentioned this also in my presentation earlier this day, but there's like this circle of improvement, that first we have to give the child protection specialists really the modern day tools, the casework modules or casework practice with which to really work with. Because if we have piles of different instructions and theoretical approaches and to ticking the boxes kind of instructions, then very little help in practical work. We teach them in universities all the basic knowledge about the psychology of people, of the I don't know, all the methodological things they have to know about how to do their work, but really the tools, the instruments, how to work with these kinds of target groups, how to conduct the assessment of the need of the need of the family, of the children. So these kinds of very practical and these helping tools that really enable the work of the child protection specialist. And this also brings along the kind of the orientation of the child protection work, how to come from a system where you only had to do what this and write down what the family has to do, and now if you haven't done this, okay, bad things start to happen. Then where to what button has to be pushed to tell the or to enable the child protection worker to go out in the field and to really engage with people and to work with people. This is the profession meant to be worked with the people, not from up to down, or not from some kind of hierarchical or kind of this patronizing position. So this is one aspect, the kind of the orientation, the family-centered and the child-centered approach. Secondly is the how to say, the competence model, or the what do we want from a child protection worker, and how do we provide all this kind of knowledge and this training from the state point of view. We can tell it that we want you to be Superman or a superstar, to be able to do your work professionally and well with really helping people. That's what we want. Yes, we want it to be really have a good impact. But what do we from the state point of view have to provide you to be able to kind of for the self-development and this kind of continuing life or this life learning path. So this is up to us to kind of design, and it's very important to really to bear in mind that this it shouldn't be kind of hierarchical system where all the most experienced child protection workers get promoted to managing or to leading positions, or only to supervise others and to do all the administrational stuff that that has nothing really to do with really working with the people that are in need. So this is also something that we have to kind of break down these barriers, and to really create an enabling system which kind of in itself allows the mentoring, the coaching process, and so that those who have come out of the university, who start practicing in child protection field, really feel the support. They feel self-confident in their own work. They can discuss the cases. They can get some good knowledge, know-how from the more experienced workers. So this is this kind of the mentoring or the job counseling environment that is very much lacking now. And yeah, this does definitely requires the administration reform, and how to create these teams based kind of agile, or is it the word agile teams? Yeah. to for them to have as much freedom to and empower to act in that sense, to be really responsible for their own actions and work, but then to have all this supportive other teams who handle with all the different issues, the servicing of the services, for instance, or so that the child protection worker doesn't have to be scouting around who's the psychologist in my village, for instance. So this is already all prepared and all done. You just have to send your client to this service, for instance, or the other representing the client in court. This is another big topic where the child protection workers, they have to sit along the judge, the representative of the mother, the lawyer of the father, and then the lawyer of the child, and then he or she is there and burns out very quickly. So this doesn't need to be the child protection worker who is, on the space. The lawyers have to be there. The child protection worker just has to provide the relevant information, not sit for hours and hours in a court case. So yeah, these kinds of things, they all reduce the stress of the staff, and this should be looked in a whole system approach, that all these aspects are necessary to really look at the child protection worker from a different angle. That it's not that oppressed victim mentality, kind of person who needs sometimes even more help than the client, but rather than a profession that is held up high, and it takes time, but it's gonna happen at some point if we continue on this path. So sorry for the long monologue, but
we have the time.
I looked into this task, I would say, really in one way narrowly, because I was thinking from our institute's perspective. Yes. Yeah. So on one way, we say as the institute, we focus on research. Yes. So science. But from other side, studies at our institute is also significant. And we also have study programs for early childhood education. Yes. And we're also preparing teachers we're also focusing not only on, preparing to be a teacher, but also we are having like courses for teachers for continuous professional development. And today, James, when you were presenting in the morning, after your presentation, I thought, and this is, I will raise already now the question. For me, it was important to hear about those 3 principles, and I was wondering if you somehow also integrate them into study programs, for example, for teacher education, or maybe other study programs. But it's just a question. Then if later you can comment, it would be very interesting to hear. However, this task gave me possibility to think about study program that we have yes,
Yeah.
and how we build the study programs. And already today, in the first part of the conference, we heard about didactics. And I think in Europe, and not only Europe, we face with the huge challenge that within teacher education, we focus a lot on didactics.
Yeah.
A lot on didactics. And looking to this model, it doesn't stress teacher, for example, yeah, but like educator as one of the core elements. Still, I think is, as you mentioned about the teams working there. So I think that educator, early childhood educator, who is working in formal or non-formal education, becomes also a significant part of the team. Yeah, if you think like also like nationally, and and if we think about public sector, so her voice is also significant. So I was reflecting now, for example, our study programs, and I just will say like very shortly what I see here, that we did this. I think is a really good tool to reflect. So what kind of content we're also giving, yeah, and how we prepare one of the specialists who will work with child and also parents. So what I see, for example, in our case, that we focus much on building responsive relationships. Yes, that goes. Yet, as I said, like our faculty, we are really unique to have other specialists here. So psychologists, social workers, child protection workers, etc., who are also studying here. So from other side, when I'm looking to this model, I'm thinking that study programs could involve much more working with other students from other fields and already kind of simulating what actually can happen afterwards,
in practice,
when you go to your field,
yeah,
and where you can also work with professionals in other ways. So one side I see we focus very much on building responsive relationship, but very much it goes like, for example, pupil, so child and educator or educator parent, but not other specialists, who can work on. Looking into the second, principle, what I also see as a lack is self-control strategies. If we really focus on planning and goal-setting skills, and it's very much from the beginning, we ask future educators also to know their planning and skills, and also then to help for children, to have it. So self-control strategies, I think, is also something that we can strengthen. And the third principle, I was already thinking today in the morning after your presentation, that I think we are lacking the most with the study programs. We focus very much on didactics, on educators work with the parent, but we really miss very much understanding stress, and how complex it can be. What does it mean? What kind of influence it has? So I think this tool is really wonderful also to reflect, narrowly into the curricula and into the study program. So yeah, shortly, what I brainstormed right now.
yeah.
Okay, I will talk shortly about our organization and specifically about the program Positive Parenting. So, of course, this program is related to build responsive relationships and better relationships, and it's really working, and the feedback from parents is amazing. But the problem is that it's a short project and it will end very soon. So I would love, and hopefully not me, that this would become a national program because it's really working. And also I see a problem that mainly we're focusing now on the families with the social problems, but I think that it's very useful for all the families, especially if you're having your first child. You always are having questions and problems and you need someone to help you. Talking about stress reduce, of course, our organization is really focusing on that, and Rasa was presenting this morning very good, that really if you are hungry and you have no place to live, so you cannot build any relationships, I guess. So yeah, we are doing really quite good job, and the environment is very supportive. But of course, we need more support from government and especially municipalities to have a better situation. That would be, I think, the main things from my side.
Thoughts for each other as you listen?
Good to hear that everybody has a problem. Well, it's not good, but actually it's a normal thing that we are able to face our problems and we are trying to find ways to solve them. If I can ask, then you said that you provide to your organization this positive parenting program, yeah? But is it for parents, both parents who are only mothers, or how do you kind of prefer to have one parent, or you prefer to have both parents?
They can come both, of course, but usually they're coming only one of them, and basically mothers. I cannot say exact percentage, but I think 90% it's our mothers. Yeah, so it would be nice to have more fathers, of course, but
yeah,
I think
it's very important.
Yeah, not only Lithuanians.
Because it would be so much easier to implement those, those strategies that you study when you have your partner who is also doing the same.
Yes, we were discussing that in Iceland, that sometimes you are coming home with some new ideas and you want to implement them at home, but your partner, he has no idea what are you talking about. So yeah, that would be a dream to have both parents, but then you need to have a very good conditions that someone will take care of your child, because in Lithuania we are having several places where we are having those trainings, and not in all places we are having possibility to take care of children.
But that should be included.
Yes, I think that's a must, because then would be much more easier to attract those parents, because they would come also to have rest a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, what time of the day do you hold the program, right? So is it convenient for the staff who likes to work 9 to 5, or is it convenient for the parents who also work 9 to 5 and can only do a class at 8 o'clock at night, right?
5 to 6, when
Right.
children can still be in the kindergarten, and you go to the kindergarten itself,
That's
just to
right.
have
Yeah.
a few hours of lecture or something,
Many ways for improvement, and
Just to tell a story. We were working with some work that we've done in Latin America. There's a group at the main children's hospital in Mexico City, and they decided to put a program together for their hospital staff. And this was mostly like the janitors, just the cleaners, the not even the nurses and doctors, just the real sort of clerical and janitorial staff, and focusing on men and fathers. And what they did was create a set of podcasts, because these guys commute for hours. And so they created, so the curriculum was done as sort of recordings that they could listen to as they commuted. But what they heard was, like, what were the times in the cycle of a baby's day where they wanted to be most involved? And it was like feeding and bath time, which is the only times that they would be around, right? Because they're working there. And a lot of what they had to work through was convincing the moms that they could trust their husbands to, like, give the baby a bath and do the feeding, right? So this was the whole program, right? And so it's like, how do we figure out a way to build this into the convenience of the schedule of who we're trying to work with, and not say, oh, you have to come do this, after you finish work, and then you still have to commute 2 hours to get home, right? Those kinds of things. So it's, yeah, but fathers are hard. It's a challenge. So.
But they actually want to be engaged. It's just that, it's,
you
have to give them the opportunity to be part of it. It's,
and to have that conversation with their partner.
Yes.
To say, okay, what will you let me do, right? It's like, I want you to do more. I want to help. You can't do that. I don't trust you with that. Sorry. Call me when the kid's 4. I'm curious, and as you were talking about the kind of isolation of the child protection teams, especially as they're out in small, numbers, What are you starting to think about strategies to create a kind of peer support for them? Are there ways to kind of help them connect with I don't know, are there ways that they can kind of periodically?
Yeah, actually, there's this wonderful blueprint from UK. I think it's a UK model. It's basically it creates, okay, it's a different kind of situation because in UK you have the Manchester municipality, which has already 200 child protection workers, so you can really mess around with teams. But the logic is it's very clear. Actually, it's sort of simple. You're creating family-facing teams that are only and purely dealing with the families. So, and they are teams of approximately 8 people or 8 persons. And then you have the enabler team, and then you have the strategy team, I think it was. So basically, you have the kind of horizontally the other teams that are supporting the enablers who are doing all this kind of administrative and bureaucratic work. And then you have the strategic team, which can, service. Sorry. Sorry.
I think if your company's going to put it, they can catch it.
Just put here. Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, to have breaking down to break down this kind of hierarchy. So, in order to have 5 levels of different managers and directors and subheads and heads, we break all those kind of barriers, and we look what really has to be done to get the work done in that sense. So we create these family facing teams that would be as said, be facing families and the children, and the enablers and the strategic team who are then the supportive parts of the system, and there is no hierarchy. You break down. It's kind of this horizontally. So this is the I think if you look at the at the longer future, where are the X and Z generations and how they're called? They don't want to work in very hierarchical kind of levels. They want to have as much freedom as possible. They want to have the ability to to really do what they think is in that sense best, and have the responsibility given to them in that way. They don't want to be controlled, and that's what we also have to take into account when we kind of design these kinds of processes and policies. So but yeah, this model in UK, it has been brought out as a good example, and it's just a question of it can't, nothing ever can be copy paste, but it's just how to adjust it into our kind of our state and the possibilities that we have. But it does require more more kind of smart solutions, because the decentralization and the centralization of the services and some kinds of hybrids that are in between, these are very political questions, even though if the child protection itself is not that political in that sense. Usually everybody is kind of on the same page with it. But if you start messing with the local municipalities within the structure itself, then things get hard.
Do you find, I mean, I think so often, reflecting on you're talking about the kind of study program, and so that so often in so many fields, we train folks to be technical experts in how to deliver something, and don't often train them in the relationship stuff, in the how do you manage a classroom, how do you manage a court, and so if as you were saying, bringing some of this kind of stuff more into the experience, because it's hard, because teachers, protection officers, folks who are running, they're often, they're exposed to and often end up carrying a lot of hard stuff, because they're working with families that are carrying a lot of hard stuff. And so are they, the peer support groups, are there ways that the environment I create in my classroom, and do I have the time to build those relationships with my kids is as important sometimes for those kids learning as how well you deliver the math lesson, right? And we don't do a lot of training around those kinds of things anywhere. I mean, yeah.
This, yeah, if I may, it's a very interesting point. I think it's for us in Estonia, it's a kind of sweet and sour topic. For instance, we have in PISA tests. I don't know if you know the PISA. Yeah, we rank the highest in social sciences, in mathematics, and also I think that in third was the physics or whatever. Basically, in 3 or 4 subjects, we rank among the top 3 of the world, with Singapore and and so we have in that sense a very high qualification or very high standards in the formal education, but something happens when they go to universities, when they start to work, something happens, and that when we see that the input of the from the output then of the personal effort, kind of there's a very specific word for that, basically the added value of the work that, or the of the people that are working or entering the working field, it like drops significantly. So if they are so highly educated, I mean, they have like super good knowledge and world's best knowledge in all the different subjects, then how come that these this knowledge cannot be it doesn't realize in that sense, it doesn't come into effect, it doesn't show in your work, in your in the outcomes, in the persona per capita, whatever the very important words are. And so, so it means that something is wrong. We, and I think that we do actually focus maybe too much on this formal, things, rather than, how to cooperate, how to work in the teams, how to brainstorm, how to solve problems, which life is all about problem solving in that sense. But there are, now I think that this has reached us, and also the policymakers and a lot of effort in the recent years has come to really to modernize the curricula and the way we teach children and what we teach the children. It is more than ever, I think, relevant to as you said, it may seem like a marshmallow topic, but actually it's quite the contrary. Yeah. The personal skills and being a good person, simply, I think also is a very important skill. How to be a good friend, and then how to be a good person in that sense. Yeah.
Curious thoughts from just being a faculty of education. Right?
Yes, I just can add what I heard. Actually, it's very good points you are mentioning, because I think what we're now experiencing within the system of education, that affective dimension is eliminated from really early age, like from first steps in the kindergarten and so on. We focus too much on cognitive processes that are happening within educational institutions. And there are lots of science that shows, a lot of scientific works, research that shows that people, like children, they experience very much huge stress, because the affective dimension is eliminated in educational institutions. But then when they step out of the institution, they immersed into many emotions. And another factor that is very significant for this is media, and lots of content what they get is through media, and it also gives significant can be significant stressor also next to it. And here also, of course, we spoke that parents roles here is crucial, etc. So what I here just wanted to say that we're also reflecting how from the first moment young person, is in educational system. So he comes to kindergarten. I don't know. It can be also non-formal, activities that goes. And our colleague and Sergejus today was presenting, this materiality, everything that actually, this affective dimension also would come. And when I look into those 3 principles, it still very much for me goes with this affective, dimension, not only on the cognitive processes. And yet I see that is really very complex process. And when I'm thinking about study programs, I think as an institute, we also need to restart our thinking, how we see the processes. And in many cases, it's much easier to work on cognitive skills than affective skills, and work on subject than on stress as a subject, and work on your emotions, etc. Yeah, so this is also like so it's demand, so financial, human, so it's really requires a lot of investment, and it should be like systematic movement. So it should be like step by step that we should make. So it's not just to how to say, to put one extra subject within study course and say, okay, so you will have now some course about the stress in early childhood. It won't work like that. So it's just my thoughts that comes hearing you.
Maybe I want to reflect one thing. Last week I was in Iceland, and we had really very interesting visits and discussions. And they asked, what do parents in Lithuania hope their children will learn at school? And we said math, biology, English, and etc. And they said, oh, but in Iceland, parents are putting social skills in the very first place. They expect that their children will find friends, will have good relationships, and all the other things are really far away from from this first place. So Iceland is really one of the happiest nations in the world, and this also might be one of the things why they are and why we are not.
Tell me about it. Yeah, we're now starting a political fight over social emotional learning, right? We're indoctrinating our children with that, and it's like, curious, in the parenting programs that you're running at SAVE, and it goes back to the stigma question a little bit that you raised this morning, Joanna. How do you cope with what could feel like a deficit model, if you know what I mean? So that the parents who are coming into these programs often is the perception that they're in the program because they're not good parents, right? You were saying that hope would be that this is something that's universally offered, anybody can do it. How do you deal with, what are the kinds of attitudes are you seeing that families and parents, some of the work, any of it, that they're there not because they're seeking a kind of positive desire to learn more about being parents, but because somehow they or someone else has decided they're not good parents and they need to kind of improve their skills. And I just, what kind of dynamics are you seeing in the program that way?
Oh, this is
it's a good.
it's a good and just microphone.
See, that's my job. I get to come ask hard questions and then I leave.
I really don't know how to answer it. I'm not sure if parents really do understand that they are bad parents.
Okay.
Because we really are from a Soviet Union. Yeah, and our parents, they had no knowledge as how to raise us, and we are doing sometimes the same thing. So yeah, it's really a very very huge problem. For example, I also want to name one Iceland example that they had one immigrant. She was beating her child, and they received a call, and they said that this is bad, you cannot do this. And then she brought many books, and she showed them that, oh, but in our culture, in our nation, that's really a normal thing to beat our child. It's even written. So it's really, well, yeah, I don't know. It's really a long discussion. It might be, but we are facing some problems. We're really having them, and yeah, we're. I think.
Yeah. But do you see that? I mean, I guess it's more an attitude question. Do you feel like most of the parents who are participating are doing it from a positive attitude that this is going to, in a sense, support them in being good parents as opposed to correct them or teach them something to do, right? It's hard. It's like, we're going to teach you to be a parent. It's like, come on. Our species has survived several hundred million, however many years, you know, so we're doing okay. But, you know.
Yeah, as Rasa said, we're having two different Lithuanians. So I think in big cities, the situation is quite okay. The parents are really willing to get information. We're having lots of books, seminars, and etc. And they really are entering it. But in province, we are still having lots of problems, and it's really a problem how to attract them. Yeah. How we need to educate them. Yeah, but I hope we will manage it in the future. We're working on it. Yeah. We are. But yeah, it's a very good topic. It's also a big part of the designing process of how to design services and our policies that people would want to be the clients of, but not even like this kind of active positive wanting, but rather than like this passive knowing that I wouldn't have to apply for anything, but I wouldn't like to register myself to some countries, but things just proactively happen. So that I wouldn't feel that I am kind of for instance, this is the case with the universal family benefits. We have had in Estonia for a really long time a universal family benefit system, but previously, when this was, I think 12, 15, 20 some years ago, but previously it was also based on this, you had to applicate. You had to show that, okay, I have this and that, I don't have that much money for the, I don't know, for the housing, for the food, etc. And so you can imagine how many people went to apply for this kind of
administrative burden, right? You put the burden on the family. There are these 7 things, and you have to fill out 7 different applications and turn them in 8 different places, right?
Yeah. So it's it's from the state perspective of view, it's a lot cheaper to pay everybody the same amount. It's you are equal with your neighbor. You're equal with the same person that lives in the other part of the country. But of course, you can build additional kind of benefits and kind of this monetary stimulus. But this, the basis has to be strong and universal. I really believe in that, and that has really proven to be the case in Estonia. But yeah, just a quick remark on the and how to tell people that they have to go to some sort of programs, or and how to tell them that I think you're not managing well. I think we have. I think you also have some Ukrainian refugees, right? Quite a portion. We also have them quite a lot, actually, compared to our size of population. It's like 5 to 6% even, and mostly of them families with children and women, and mothers. So they do come from a very different, background in that sense, with cultural, differences, and that they are all absolutely wonderful people and friendly people, but it's just that
they don't know. They have no.
Yes, they don't. It's it's sometimes even they don't know how we do things. I mean, sometimes okay, throwing trash on the pavement. Okay, we don't do that. Okay, we don't hit our children. Okay, that we don't do either. We have a ban on corporal punishment. Okay, and that was a big discussion also when these refugees started to come. That okay, how to best introduce them our way of living in a quickly, compact, manner, so that it wouldn't be kind of, like, hurtful emotionally. Why do you need to tell me all these things? I don't want to hear them.
That's right. I just fled a war, please.
Yeah, exactly. But in our way of society, we thought that we have to introduce these kinds of rules in order for it's for their own sake. I mean, it is such a politically sensitive issue, and when we have stories of how Ukrainian refugees beat their children in the middle of the street, that's not good. No. So anyways, and so we decided that we would, launch this kind of module of, this group model that we would take some 20 to 30 Ukrainian refugees in one time, because they were first accommodated in hotels, so it was really easy to go in the same hotel. There were also all this childcare was handled, and etc. And so, we just, kind of, lecturing, showing pictures, showing, little like videos and stuff, and to, in a positive way, not to kind of, be offensive or yeah. Right. So it was a very tricky, but I think we managed it, and the aim is also to, show, positive interest from your own side. I mean, it's not that I think that you're a bad person, but it's just that this is how we do, and we want to welcome you as good as we can, and we want to treat you as equal. So it's well, I don't know how will we manage to do that, but so far.
Like a welcome and orientation, right? Welcome to Estonia. Yeah. Here we're going to orient you to
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of the reason like in the United States, I mean, there's I don't know what the percentages are, but a lot of people end up in parenting programs because they get mandated out of the family courts, so that they have to go attend. It's like, okay, what do you do? Like, if you want to get your child back that we've taken from you because you're a bad parent, you might be, right? There's stuff that's going on and whatever else is going on in the household. So go take this parenting class and come back with your certificate, and then we'll, so it sets up these kinds of dynamics that are, start from such a deficit model and start from such a sense of punitive or the requirements. And so, yeah. So, other thoughts? Otherwise, I think we can wrap this up. Thank you for the conversation. This is, and it's just.
When will be the next time when you will visit Europe?
I don't know.
Okay, no plans yet.
No.
But you can just let me know.
Okay.
Find it very interesting.
Yeah. As I jokingly say, when people, I was just, I came here actually. I was in Billund, Denmark, and do you all know what is in Billund, Denmark? Lego. So this is the annual Lego Idea Conference. So the Lego Foundation is a partner of our center, is a funding partner. And so we were there, and I was talking to somebody, and where were they from? That I've interacted with and known for a long time, from Colombia. And she's like, why haven't we seen you in Colombia? And I said, well, I haven't been invited. And she's like, oh. It's like, I don't just show up, right? Anyway, so, I'm not sure I can accept every invitation, but it's anyway. No, thank you. It's also, we know this is our job, and our service to the field is to do this kind of work, but it keeps us pretty separate from and distant from the work. So it's just, I always love the chance just to hear about the work. What you all are, and it's just great. You're in academia, you're in government, you're in a NGO frontline program provision, and it's like, just to get the sense of like how it looks from your chairs, right? And we're modest about what we think we can offer, and try not to say anything that we actually don't know anything about. You know, because there's plenty that we don't know anything about, and you're always tempted because, oh, Harvard will tell us. It's dangerous. Well, and I mean, and you can get sucked into that. That, oh, I'm from Harvard and Harvard does know everything, and because I'm from Harvard and people see me from Harvard, I can just tell them whatever I want and they're going to believe me. Thankfully, our director, Jack Shonkoff, who was the faculty director of our center and sort of started the center, he brings a remarkable balance of expertise and modesty to the work, and he's created that culture, I think, in our center, so that we're, you know, fervent and passionate about this, but also like, hey, you know, and there's plenty of other expertise and experience out there, and so we have a piece that we think we can contribute, but it's not the whole story.
But how do you kind of explore, like, every year what topics do you go more into deeply, or how do you like plan your work and your research behind this?
Yeah, and so I mean, the honest truth is we as a center fund and do very little research. We have a faculty who sit in the different schools at Harvard, heavily sort of education, public health, medicine, occasionally folks from law or business or some of the arts, the psychology and other faculties. But they're doing their own research. We don't run their grants. We don't manage the money. We're not. We will often create spaces for faculty, like interdisciplinary spaces. We're a cross-university center. So one of the things the university wants us to do is to foster interesting collaborations across disciplines and things. And so sometimes we'll have some funding where we, you know, a small seed grant to get some work started or to enable some folks to collaborate together. But that's all. And then they go off and get their big research grants. And so what we're really trying to do, and there's a group that's called the National Scientific Council on the Developing Child that Jack chairs and kind of founded. But it's 15 high-level researchers who sit at universities across the U.S. And they come together and they're doing that synthesis of the knowledge base work. So they're looking at, all right, what do we know? What's established, not what's the latest study, but okay, what is the sort of broad consensus that if you put 100 neuroscientists in a room, 95 of them will go, yes, that's right. There are always 3 or 4 who, you know, will disagree. And so that group has been working now for 20 years. And so they will kind of, all right, what's the next piece of work we need to kind of, and so the latest major piece so they generate working papers, and these are all on our website. And the most recent one they did was this connecting the brain and the body. Kind of, we need to connect the learning and health agendas because it's the same science. It's the same stress activation process that's affecting all of these things. So they'll generate a paper. This partnership we've had with this group called the Frameworks Institute that helps frame how we talk about it to the public. So they are the ones who have worked with that council and our center to develop these metaphors: brain architecture, serve and return, toxic stress, the resilience scale, and so on. And so that they're part of the process. And then it's our center who's basically taking those papers and turning them into briefs, videos, you know, all the kind of content that policy and program folks around the world then want to try and use. And then we can use to turn into these kinds of offerings or presentations. And so that's really the work of the center. And we've done, we spent the last 10 years also, you can find on our website, looking at, there's a framework for kind of program improvement. So working with teams developing interventions or programs, like, do you have a really clear theory of change? Is the program content actually aligned with your theory of change? Is your evaluation plan actually evaluating what you said you were going to do and not just 35 things, right? Because there's this challenge in the field that we create evidence-based programs that are largely based on average effects, which masks variation. And often you can't tell what it was in the program that produced the result. So you do a lot of things, you measure a lot of things, and you say, hey, we have some evidence. But it can't get replicated because then nobody knows what pieces actually produce the result, right? So it's helping teams get, so we did that pretty intensively for a while. We're backing off of that. That toolkit is going to be an open access online resource that we're working on this year. Actually, the Science by Design, we're also turning into an open access online sort of set of modules so teams can kind of take, you know, there'll be videos and stuff, but you can sort of walk through these kinds of tools because it's not I mean, they're tools. They're reflection tools. They're ways to bring certain lenses or questions to bear on teams that they know, you guys know what you do. You know what your challenges are. You've got solid expertise and experience there. So it's like, it's that kind of adaptive thinking kind of stuff that we try. And now it's like, there's this next generation of kind of body of knowledge around health, around more systemic issues. So we're tackling a lot of the kind of, all right, what's the impact of systemic racism and inequities on child development? So what's happening in the conditions in which families are, you know, segregation, families are, you know, poor populations that live next to toxic waste dumps, you know, like those other things in the environment that are affecting child outcomes that you can't necessarily fix with a program. What other parts of the system have to be paying attention to that, right? We're digging into the heterogeneity, the variability. So like, we're all different, which means our sensitivity is different and our response to program is different. So how, again, back to actual impact, how do we know? So that's the kind of, so we're kind of in this space of like, oh, we got to go back and kind of refresh the story we tell. And so that's going to be a lot of the work of the next couple of years, of bringing some of these new elements into that story. We're trying pieces of that out right now. And so, yeah, so that's kind of the work. So at the end of the day, I mean, this is not official, but I like to say we're actually storytellers. That's our job. We're trying to tell a clear story about what we know about how development happens, and to share that with folks who then can figure out how to use it. So
it's a pity I really hadn't heard about your center.
That's okay.
For now, so.
Yeah, please do.
To come and,
Yeah.
It's very rewarding work, I think, what you are doing in that sense. But at least if you know, I don't know if you get any feedback on which, you know,
we love feedback about what works. Is it relevant? Does it make sense? I mean, understandably, a lot of this stuff gets framed initially in a U.S. cultural context, because frameworks, their methodology is grounded in a lot of cultural models of anthropology, and that we all kind of carry cultural frames through which we receive information. And so that's what they've done that research now on child development in 6 or 7 other countries around the world. So they're starting to build out a more diverse understanding of. So we're modest about, hey, so you know, a lot of this is, so how much does it work? Or no, actually, in our context, that metaphor doesn't work very well. I mean, that's nice information, but it's not practical, right? We love that feedback because we're just always trying to learn. Because if folks can't actually use it in the context in which they're working, it's not that useful at the end of the day. So anyway. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and this has been great. It's, like I said, new corner of the world for me, and so that's fun.
VIP.
Yes, yes. I don't know, maybe some people are still online. You can ask if they maybe want to comment something.
Yeah.
Oh, is there a way for them to do that?
I don't know if I will check if
Yeah.
someone's still
Maybe they have
Yeah.
some questions online.
Yes, and there are no questions online, but if you want, James, you can ask if someone wants to.
If anyone's still there and isn't gotten bored with our conversation and has a question or a comment or wants to share something from their own work through the chat, that would be great.
No typing.
No one is typing, but I see it.
Okay, okay. Good. Well, I think we can let everyone go then. All right. So to those who've been sticking with us online, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for this conversation. It's great.
What time did we have the section? I
I
hope
think it's
that.
at 7.
Okay, then we still. probably have some time to change and.
Yeah.
Yeah, I already checked whether I can change it